Hey dudes, welcome to Ask Tommy number 7. First question. Why did you distance yourself from the horror community after 2019? Well, long story short, or short story long, when I started going to cons in 2016, my mindset must have been the same mindset every fan has when they go to cons to meet their idols for the first time. You know, oh man, you'd think with that level of success and legendary status that that you don't think they would do any of these cons, but man, they're doing them, and man, they are philanthropic. They care about the fans. They're giving back to the fans. Well, by 2018, I slowly began to find out the truth of that statement. Aside from the fact I grew bored pretty quick discussing only horror and sci fi, and that some people loved their fans and the cult success they built up from movies, there are some sick, depraved, creepy, sociopathic people in the horror community and the whole scene in general. You know, it's not the movie stars, it's the agents, the managers, publicists, and the fans. There's a lot of creepy, weird fans out there, and I don't blame the horror stars for keeping their distance and lying and being weird and shit, right? But when you recognize a good person, good judge of character, you gotta fucking stop treating every fan the same. You know, it's just, it's not necessary. It's it's bad form. You know, so in the first 8 to 9 months that I was doing the podcast, I had some unstable motherfuckers DMing me, asking me for phone numbers of my guests. And quite frankly, I almost quit the podcast with two that happened in the same week. But then I realized I needed to keep doing Splat from the Past, but focus on pop culture in general, you know, not so much horror and sci fi, you know, and that's what I did. Now, in regards to the sick actors in horror, you know, there are a lot of them who only do conventions for the money and they think of it as another acting job. They spent 30 to 40 years not acknowledging the movies, and to them, the conventions are acting jobs, you know? That's all it is, just fucking acting jobs, you know? They pretend to like the fans. They don't want friendships with them. They just want the rolled up green after they fucking scribble and have a flash go off. That's all they want, you know? And, you know, I started to slowly catch wind of this in the first year, but it took a while before I fully caught on. Like, the first experience I had was that one in 2017 with Lisa Wilcox, you know. But again, my mindset at the time was this is weird. I need to move on until it happens again. And it wasn't until mid 2018 I started seeing signs. The majority of convention stars were starting to get strange, whether I had interviewed them or not, or, you know, whatever. And, you know, since 2019, since late 2019 going into 2020, you know, there was this one particular manager who showed his true colors. You know, I had a conversation with a former friend of mine in the horror world who shall remain nameless. Her name has been brought up many times, but I don't need to bring her name up again. And after I had that conversation with her about this particular manager, I checked out of the horror community for good. You know, I stopped posting interviews in horror groups. The 13 fanboy shit was starting to get worse with people involved. The toxic tribalization online was gross. And that's why I left the horror community in 2020. You know, I just checked out. You know, I still have horror guests, just not the big name iconic ones so much because they're all hip to me. They all know me and shit, you know, practically. Even the ones who have never been on my show, they know who I am because motherfuckers like this manager talk shit, you know. But I go for the more obscure horror stars who don't do conventions because it's less of a headache that way, and they're so much more humble. And so far, hardly any of them have started doing conventions, like hardly any of them. So I guess that's a good thing. One was the last time you had a guest say, "Don't release the interview." Funny you ask. This summer, I did an interview with somebody who told me for a year that she was going to do it. And after dozens of reschedules, she says to me, "So is this interview going to be real talk or fluff?" And I said, "Oh no, this is, real talk." And she's like, "Well, okay, I'm going to take this interview seriously now because it wasn't all it wasn't all a bed of roses on that set of that TV series that she was on." And I said, "Okay, great. Ooh, I can't wait to hear this stuff, right? Even though I don't do gossip, I do like hearing gossip." So I was looking forward to this interview. And then something weird happened. The day of the interview, she was driving and she gave me nothing. Nothing at all. I mean, she was giving me short answers. She was very choosy with her long stories. She did not laugh or display a sense of humor of any kind. And it was really uncomfortable and awkward. And after the interview, she said, "Can I listen to it before it's released?" And I said, "Sure." Well, she listened to it and said, "Don't release it." So I said, "Okay." I made no qualms about it, even though I felt violated and that my time was wasted. I was just like, "Fuck it," you know. Who knows? I mean, maybe she was scared. Maybe she's a covert narcissist. I don't know. I mean, if I ever have an encounter with her again, that's weird. Then I'll know who I'll know the answer to that fucking question. So I'm over it now, and I found somebody else from that TV series that I can reach out to when the 30th anniversary rolls around in 20 or no 35th anniversary I should say in 2025. And so that was the last time I had a guest say, "Don't release it." What person are you trying to get on the podcast currently that you really want to have on? Well, as I've said in previous Ask Tommy episodes, I really want Carney Wilson, but I can't make the connection. I lost hope. Maybe it's possible it'll happen. I'm trying to get Moon Zappa on because she has a memoir out, and I'd also like Sean Kay, daughter of John Kay of Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf was like one of my first concerts. So I'd love to get her. And we all have mutual friends, but I don't want to impose on them, because they're at such a high level and it's just like, it's not right. I mean, if they were to come to me and say, "Hey, Tommy, who would you like on your show?" Pick anybody that I know. And if they said Cardi Wilson or Sean Kay or even Moon Zappa, I'd be like, "Ooh, funny you should mention it." Any chance of getting Jill Terashita on the podcast? I get asked this constantly by online fans. She's not on social media a whole lot, and I'm sure as hell not going to go through her management. But, who knows? Maybe eventually I will make the connection. As I've said before, she had better tits than Linnea in Night of the Demons. So, in my opinion, I wouldn't, not interview her, because in my opinion, she's got the better of the two. Have you really wanted a guest badly and an awkward situation prevented it? Oh, fuck yes. Here's a more recent story. There's a very underrated Canadian comedy movie that impacted my life since I was 19. And I've interviewed a few people from the movie, but she's one of the main stars of it. So I found her on LinkedIn in 2017, sent her a DM, no response. Since 2022, I've DM'd her on Facebook and I've written on her wall and I've gotten no response. Well, I noticed recently that her sister was doing a lot of self promoting on her page because she's a psychic. So I sent her a message, and I was thinking at the time, because I've interviewed Sheena Metal recently, who's a psychic medium, that all psychic mediums, they're all just trying to get by and they're all trying to help people. Well, how wrong was I when this situation came on? So I sent her an email, and she was very cold to me and not welcoming at all. This sister of this movie actress, and she was saying to me, she's very private and she doesn't want to revisit her acting past, and this was after that she said that she was going to forward the email. I doubt she forwarded the fucking email. And she was like, she's private, she doesn't want to revisit her acting past and all this shit and blah, 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 blah. And I was really, really pissed at this. Long story short, a big feud broke out, and she was bad mouthing YouTube and podcasts and saying that we're nothing but judgment passers and clickbait bullshitters, which I was very insulted by, because this is not a gossip show, though gossip does come up occasionally, but it's usually one sided with the other guest, because I don't want to talk about that shit. It's not my business. And that whole experience gave that woman away as a snake oil bullshit artist. So, whatever. She's in it for the money. It's obvious. She's only in it for the money. And that really disappointed me. When was the last time you had a pleasant convention experience without any bullshit? Probably in 2021, when I met Linda Jo Miller and Carl Craig, the two Japanese sci-fi movie stars that I've had on the podcast. They were very sweet and humble, and it was my first con since COVID. Nothing bad happened that day. Everything was cool. I really enjoyed that experience. Do you see a level off or a peak for podcasting in the future, since podcasting is huge now? I don't know, I don't see podcasts becoming a fad, and I hope I'm right. This is the greatest medium ever created, ever invented. Who knows what the future holds for podcasts? There's too many of them, but if it does, fade away, then it's only natural. But I don't see it at this point, because pretty much everybody, can create content on a podcast and the internet in general. Are there any topics off limits on your podcast? Oh, yes. I don't do politics. If you followed the show through the years, I interview a lot of like minded liberals and occasionally a social conscience, rabbit hole happens, but I let everyone know I don't do politics beforehand, and I also don't allow my personal life to be a part of the conversation unless I know the person. If you listen to all the early shows, I was such a lousy interviewer. People would start interviewing me and ask me personal shit, which I put my foot down. I don't want to hear stupid questions like, how many followers do you have? Do you monetize your podcast? Why do you do this? It's like, isn't it fucking obvious why I do this? I'm passionate about it. It's just all it is leeway to try to end the interview when they start asking questions. So politics and me are the only two podcast topics that are off limits on Splat from the Past. Can you recommend an 80s slasher movie double feature to watch with friends? Oh, many. During the summertime, you can watch the original Friday the 13th with Madman, or substitute Madman with Sleepaway Camp or Tourist Trap. Even though it's not really a summer, summertime slasher flick. You can watch Halloween, also the original Halloween with Just Before Dawn, or watch Silent Madness, The Forest, Bloody Birthday, etc. There's so many 80s slasher movies, but those are my favorites in particular. How are the convention going movie star actors different from the non convention going horror actors? Well, a good number of the convention actors are better whether or not they show it, and convention actors are just on autopilot. The convention stars have heard every fucking question a million times. There's really no way that you can save it. But with, the non convention people, they are just so much more humble, and they're not fake. They're down to earth. They see the humor in their cult success. But, a lot of the horror stars, not all of them, but a lot of them are just on autopilot. They're just waiting for the next question. What horror movies would you like to get guests from for Halloween October this year? That's easy. I want to get guests from the Amityville Horror. It turns 45 this year. Somebody from Transylvania Twist, Ed Wood, Phantasm. I'd love to get Robin Lively from Teen Witch, but I've never been able to connect. We shall see if that happens. That would be like a huge coup for me to get Robin Lively from Teen Witch and Karate Kid Part 3 and Not Quite Human 1 and 2. Oh my God, that would be fantastic. I don't see it happening anytime soon, but you never know. Fingers and toes crossed. In the early episodes of Splat from the Past, when you presented yourself on camera, you wore blue sunglasses. Do you still own those? Of course, I have many different colors: blue, red, orange, black, etc. If you catch me on any Zoom podcasts I do on YouTube, like Linda Marcus Smith's, for instance, there's one where I have blue. I think I have orange in two of them, maybe red, or maybe that's Python's Paradise. Either way, when I do Zoom podcasts, you can still see me wearing those colorful sunglasses that I used to wear on Splat from the Past when I first started it back in 2017. I don't know, it's just, I'm so insecure about the way I look now and stuff. Like, it's become a trademark of mine, especially since I'm a dork and I love the 80s. I gotta show my love for different colors, different colors of the rainbow. Where did you get the term toe curlers to describe your powerhouse guests? I have a warped mind, dude. It should be noted. I've always been a fan of the term toe curling. In general, I just love the term toe curling and toe curlers. So lo and behold, toe curlers. That's why I called them. You know, it's well known. Back to the Future is your favorite movie of all time. How many times a year do you watch it, and on what outlet? Once or twice a year, I watch it, but this year I haven't, but I plan on watching it soon. Sometimes I watch it on one of the DVD editions, whether it's the 2002 edition, which includes a very informative Q&A session with Bob Gale and Zemeckis and a historian. I'm blanking on his name. It's hard to pronounce. I think it's a French name, if I'm not mistaken. Or the 2015 edition. I also own the 1986 VHS tape, the retail copy, and one of my most prized possessions, the Kodak tape from 1987 when we recorded Back to the Future off HBO with the Heavenly Kid. Sadly, the Heavenly Kid didn't survive, but I have it on Thorn MI HBO video. That's where I am with Back to the Future in 2024. Earlier this year, you overtly discussed your blow up with fellow podcasters Aaron Gilmer and the New World Pictures podcast and the $2 late fee podcast. Any update on that? Oh, fuck yes. First off, the New World and the $2 peeps, they are small potatoes compared to what I'm about to tell you about Gilmer. Because, I don't know if they've talked shit about me on their podcast. I'm going to do some research and find out soon. But I'll tell you about her. One night back in July, it was brought to my attention that Gilmer mentioned me in her anniversary podcast. and she read our email interaction on air. But before she read the email, she claimed 2 years ago she wrote me a DM on Facebook and said, "Hey, I'm starting a podcast and I was wondering if we could get together and talk about podcasting." And allegedly I said, "No, I would rather talk about sex with you." Now, you all know that I am a horn dog and I overly talk about my sex addiction and my sex life, and sex is just a frequent topic on Splat from the Past in general. However, I have zero recollection of ever seeing the name Erin Gilmer on Facebook 2 years ago. I didn't know who the fuck she was until last year when I heard her on the New World Pictures podcast, and I was impressed by her knowledge for movies, and I liked her energy. I didn't know who she was, and she claimed all of this happened. Don't you think that if this really did happen, she would have called me out and said, "Hey, dude, this happened 2 years ago. Do you really expect me to come on your podcast without an apology? Or, you're a creeper, blah, 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 blah," right? Well, because she didn't do that, instead she gave me a covert narcissistic gaslight, because then she proceeded to say that I'm obsessed with sex and talk about it in every episode, which is not true. She obviously does not listen to the podcast, and frequently, on top of all of that, she attacked my small dick. Whatever. She has had porn stars on her podcast, so she is a hypocrite. And again, I have no recollection of that incident 2 years ago. Okay? I wish I could say I'm sorry, but right now I'm not, because I don't know if it really happened or not, and she's just pulling a narcissistic fucking power trip over me and shit. And whatever. I'm getting out of that, and I'm getting the fuck over it, because drama is the least of my fucking worries, and I don't need any more drama in my life, because I fucking love what I'm doing with this podcast. I love talking to people, and I'm gonna keep on doing it. And if she don't like it, she can fuck off, and the rest of them can as well. Well, that's it. Later, dudes.